all your motors are warmed up when the oil temperature gauge hits 40 degrees and the oil pressure drops suddenly to normal. The cylinder head temperature gauge will read from 100 to 200 degrees. They're okay now. Then you hit your emergency bell button again. That's a signal to the crew member back there to shut off the putt-putt and get out of the airplane. We don't turn on the radio till we're ready to taxi out. It's the co-pilot's duty to handle radio conversation. Tower from 7645 on south end of ramp, ready to taxi out for takeoff. Go ahead.
7645 from the tower. Clear to taxi to the north end of the north-south taxi strip and stand by for takeoff. Go ahead.
7645, roger. Ready to go, Corporal?
Okay, sir.
One thing you must always remember is that you're in a ship with a tricycle landing gear. The nose wheel must never be turned to an angle of more than 40 degrees to either side. Did you see that red sign on the nose wheel when you inspected the well?
Yes, I did, Dick.
You'll notice it's easy to taxi the ship, and there's no need for taxiing fast. In making a turn, always keep the inside gear rolling. Never bring it to a complete stop, as is often done in airplanes with conventional gear. And keep your eyes open on the ground or in the air. It isn't the airplane, it's what you hit with it. When you park, always make certain that your nose wheel is straight ahead. Otherwise, running up your separate engines, the airplane has a tendency to turn in the direction in which the nose wheel is cocked. The thrust from one of the engines might damage the nose wheel assembly. Corporal Smith is checking now to see if the nose wheel is straight.
I get you, Captain.
Next is the engine run-up and prop check, one engine at a time. Push it up till it's doing 2,000 RPM. Different engines have slightly different manifold pressure readings.
Is that the RPM at which you check the mags?
Yeah. Look at your checklist. That's first.
I'm sorry.
Put your propeller selector switch and decrease RPM, and watch how the RPM falls off on the tachometer. As soon as you see it drop, return the selector switch to increase RPM, and notice how the tachometer shows increase back to 2,000. Do you hear how the sound of the propeller changes?
You can hardly miss it.
That's right. Put your propeller selector switch in automatic and test your propeller pitch control handle. Pull it part way back until the RPM decreases 200 revolutions, keeping your eye on the tachometer. Then push it forward, watching the tachometer to see that it returns to 2,000 RPM. The next step is to throttle back to 1,400 and do the same thing with the other engine. Now you run your engines up together to about 1,800. At the same time, checking your manifold pressure against the RPM. Be sure that both engines are putting out approximately the same power.
Corporal, check the generators. If Corporal Smith finds the ammeters are showing more than 10 amps difference, we'll give this airplane back to the crew chief. Generators are okay. Oil temperature is 60 to 80. Oil pressure is 75 to 85.
Check.
Fuel pressure with booster pumps off, 15 to 17.
Check. Turn the boosters on.
Yeah. Should be 12 to 17 pounds now.
Check.
Is the takeoff checklist next?
Right.
Check instrument panel for placarded operations instructions. Cow flaps, open for all ground operation. Wing flaps, down 1/4 to 1/2 as required. Remove landing gear control lock. Supercharger low. Oil cooler shutters open except during extremely cold weather. Carburetor air control, cold. Hydraulic pressure 750 to 950 pounds per square inch. Booster pumps on. Primers off. Nose gear emergency control, normal up. Main gear emergency control, normal up. Mixture control, auto rich. Propeller controls, high RPM, forward. Propeller switches, selector, automatic. Safety on, feathering normal. Batteries on.
Are the generator mainline switches on, Corporal?
Generator's okay, sir. Don't start takeoff with cylinder temperature above 205 degrees centigrade. Rudder and aileron tabs on 0. Elevator trim tab a few degrees tail heavy. Crew in position for takeoff.
All set, Corporal?
All set, sir.
Now, you have definite duties during the takeoff. Watch the tachometer and see that it doesn't exceed 2,600 RPM. Your right hand should be bare and ready to handle the propeller switches. Your left hand is used to raise the landing gear. Here's how you put your hand. By keeping your right hand down on the quadrant, you can keep the throttles from creeping back during takeoff. If your tachometer should show an increase above 2,600, say 2,880, put your propeller selector switch in fixed pitch position. Then hit your feather switch for about 2 seconds, being sure to return it to normal position. That's the procedure for correcting an overspeeding engine. The other emergency procedure to be prepared for is a decreasing RPM prop. Your props will be in automatic position, which is normal for takeoff. So if one of them shows a decrease RPM, put the selector switch in increase position and bring the RPM back to 2,600. Then leave your selector switch in fixed pitch position. Understand?
Yeah.
Now, under no condition, retract the wheels until you get a definite signal from me. My hand will be on top of the throttles, and this will be it.
Roger.
Okay, call the tower.
Tower from 7645, north end of north-south taxi strip, ready to take off. Go ahead.
7645 from the tower, stand by. Ship landing, go ahead.
7645, Wilco.
Watch this ship coming in. Give you a chance to see a normal B-26 landing. Notice his nose drop. He's putting his flaps down now. As soon as they're down, he'll check his hydraulic pressure to be sure he has brakes. He establishes a glide of 140 miles per hour and holds it till he gets almost to the ground. Then he flares and comes on in, normal landing. See how he holds his nose wheel high and lets it down easy before he loses airspeed control. Then he applies his brakes gradually and turns off the runway. Get the idea?
I think so. Shall I call the tower?
Yeah.
Tower from 7645. Is it clear to take off? Go ahead.
7645 from the tower, you're clear to take off to the south on runway 14. Go ahead.
7645, roger.
I'm going to take off with 44 inches manifold pressure and 2,600 RPM. That's minimum. But if you need it, the manifold pressure can be pushed up to the red mark at 49 inches on this particular model. After the roller started, you use very little brakes to keep the ship straight. Lateral control should be maintained by the rudder only after you're a short way down the runway. As soon as you can, Get the nose wheel off and hold the ship at a slightly nose-high attitude. When you have enough speed, the ship will take off by itself. You don't have to pull it off the ground. And it's got very little torque. You could pull it off at about 110 miles per hour if you were on a short field. It'll fly itself off at about 130 miles an hour. I'm throttling back now to normal rated power, which is 38 inches of manifold pressure. Give me 2,400 RPM on the propeller pitch control.
2,400.
What were you watching during the takeoff?
Tachometer, manifold pressure gauge, and your thumb.
If you ever get to be a B-26 pilot, don't waste any time giving the signal to get that gear up the moment you're sure you're off the ground.
Because?
Because when you run out of runway, your landing gear is no good to you. Pretty tough getting to 160 miles per hour till that gear's tucked away.
I see what you mean.
Well, we're climbing now. We do that at exactly 160 miles per hour until the flaps are raised. The airplane should be at least 800 feet above the ground before you raise it. This is what is known as milking them up. You do it a little at a time, and you keep your hand on the flap handle until the flaps are all the way up. If you don't, and they should come up on one side only, you'll go into the most violent bank you ever saw in your life. But you can stop it by putting the flaps back down again.
Can I take my eyes off the tachometer?
Yeah. Put them on the hydraulic controls. It's time to neutralize them. All air work is done with cowl flaps, wing flaps, landing gear, and oil cooler shutters in neutral position at all times, in order to prevent loss of hydraulic fluid from the entire system in case one of the individual lines develops a serious leak. Turn off your boosters.
Airspeed indicator says we're picking up speed.
With the flaps up, the ship changes its attitude. You'll notice our noses come up a bit and gains about 10 miles per hour. With the cowl flaps half closed and the oil cooler flaps half closed, it streamlines the airplane to the extent that it picks up about 5 miles per hour more. But you must not forget that these controls should be handled in accordance with cylinder head and oil temperature.
Really claws her way right up into those clouds, doesn't she?